Hey, each of you, I got a very unpopular perspective on this topic. Uh, so, how about instead of, drawing conclusions and using a hero's journey and, calling people villains and heroes and stuff and archetyping people, how about you keep an open scientific mind and consider evidences, put things into context of history and lots of things. So here we go.
So nasty. A young woman is seen on video licking a container of ice cream and putting it back in the store freezer.
Licking? Oh, you're fine. Put it back. Put it back.
The video of the woman being dared to lick the ice cream has been viewed more than 10 million times. What kind of psychopathic behavior is this, wrote one person. I'm disgusted. This should be a criminal charge.
See, instead of using blame and punishment, how about people understand about what causes people to do things? So, of course, we live in a civilization, or I mean, people function in societalism, and a lot of people get put into the margins of acceptance, so they do things to gain attention. So especially, see, this video's from Inside Edition, so press and media, there's that saying going around, no attention, or no publicity is bad publicity, or whatever. So it's difficult to know exactly what causes people to do this. It's simply, people want to go viral with trends and stuff. Viral meaning popularity, not virulence, viruses. And speaking of that word, viral, how about let's make it a double entendre, double meaning, virulence as in contagion. And so I do desire to put a disclaimer that I legally am required to do. This is not medical advice. Seek your medical professional about such topics. But in my about health and conditions, so I'll put a disclaimer in the description. But for one, people are talking about criminal charge because they're spreading this theory of contagion. Because people wouldn't see this as very gross if it was just a little bit of saliva, because people eat like intestines where poop goes. People eat skin, pork rinds, things that pigs roll around in their own shit. So this wouldn't get called disgusting if they didn't think it had deadly consequences. And especially if there wasn't huge, massive amounts of money and big business behind this. Trillions of dollars selling vaccines and such. So, to inform you, I could go on about this topic for a long time. There's lots of information that you've probably never even considered or have not gotten exposed to, information that you've been left out in the dark about. And that's very hard to find to this day. And I diligently try to share this information. Information, whether accurate or inaccurate, is important to not suppress or censor, so people can decide themselves. If they get exposed, it's not about whether or not you get exposed to information that's harmful or helpful. It's that you have the tools to know how to decipher through it and filter through it to figure it out. That's what scientific methods, scientific inquiry, being able to use information processing skills. So if you take my information and you keep an open mind to try to figure out for yourselves if it makes sense, rather than doing a amygdala hijack mode and all resulting in blame and shame and punishment, which you've been conditioned to do since birth. Remember in kindergarten about sharing? So instead of hyper sensationalizing villainhood and victimhood stuff around this topic, you could consider the ramifications that maybe they don't have such ramifications. Maybe people licking something is just some saliva being added to that product. Maybe it's not little floating things that attack your body and kill you. Maybe it's the things that you're consuming on a day-to-day basis that's killing you and causing you to get sick. It's called the terrain theory. You've probably never heard of it. It's very unpopular, and people in scientific communities have tried to debunk it and tried to discredit it. But if you understand life sciences health systems, it can make sense. So I'll continue now.
The ice cream in question is Bluebell. In a statement, the company said this type of incident will not be tolerated, adding that they're working with law enforcement to find the culprit.
Not that I agree with ice cream consumption. Well, suboptimal would be like making banana ice cream just plainly out of freezing bananas. But if I recall, Bluebell is a very heavy dairy supporting company that supports massive factory farming. But if I'm guessing if this was like Ben and Jerry's, which is trying to do like plant-based non-dairy ice creams and stuff, they wouldn't have such a stringent retaliatory reaction to this kind of stuff, especially since milk products and sales have declined dramatically, and these people seem to be getting desperate to meet their livelihoods. Otherwise, they find new professions to make incomes. And this publicity makes it even harder.
With food like this could lead to a felony charge. Some Twitter users claim they've identified the woman as coming from San Antonio, Texas. Bluebell ice cream.
So I'll say I don't agree. I wouldn't do this or recommend doing this, because I don't recommend products. I recommend fruits. Oranges from a tree, watermelon from a vine, jaboticaba from a tree, berries from a bush. Go on and on and on. Something that you can tell immediately has one ingredient. So I'm not going to recommend this, nor am I going to talk about it as destructive or significant in no fashion. People are getting dramatically sick. People are getting desperate. People are fucking diseased, like dying. Millions and millions of people dying. And they're gonna support medical systems till their death. And I have a legally disclaimer that I can't talk about. I legally can't talk about stuff. I can mainly say that these views do not express these views are for entertainment purposes only. But the information behind this is what matters. So as long as you get exposed to the information and you do your own research, you can figure it out for yourself.
It's a popular brand sold mainly in the South. Inside Edition producer Alicia Powers is in Louisiana and found the flavor the woman is licking. Tin Roof. Once you remove the lid, the ice cream is exposed. Bluebell explains, during production, our half gallons are flipped upside down and sent to a hardening room where the ice cream freezes to the lid, creating a natural seal. The lids are frozen tightly to the carton. Any attempt at opening the product should be noticeable. Other ice creams do have a plastic seal. This container of Haagen-Dazs, one right there.
I think a core problem about this is a need of trust. I think that's what's really going on here, is people are trying to trust each other. And there's a lot of distrust out there, and this just makes it more distrusting.
As does Stony Field, right there on top. And check out this container of Ben & Jerry's. Plastic completely covering the top. All of these are more difficult to tamper with.
Licky.
Yeah, so if you look up natural hygienism and orthopathy, orthopathism, fruitarianism, terrain theory, pasteurization and Louis Pasteur's what theory to, I can't think of what his theory is, but that's like less 200 years old, like less than 200 years old. There's been life on this planet for 3.4 billion years. Okay, now let's say you have mad cow disease, right? It's contagious, right? Cow to cow, or bird flu, bird to bird. Say it spreads from cows in mass agriculture who are fed corn, and they're just pumped with chemicals, and they're just living very toxic lifestyles apart from being in the grass and stuff. Now if you say that all these cows are spreading contagion with each other, but guess what? They're all being fed and pumped up with the identical toxic stuff. They're all being very similar lifestyle practices. Not lifestyle practices, but these cows get sick with similar symptoms based on similar consumption and bodily intake processes. If you if you take one cow from the grass and have it live, have it survive on very different consumption and intake habits, but then put it and have it hang out with the rest of the cows, and all these cows are getting sick, you're gonna see that grass cow, that cow in the pasture and stuff, that it doesn't make sense how they would be hanging out, because it'd be living naturally and the other ones wouldn't. But just theoretically, if you're having them all hang out together, you're gonna see 99,000 out of 100,000 times, or some big number, that cow is not gonna get sick. It's not communicable disease that you catch. It's that you're consuming and putting toxic things into your body at similar kinds of things as to the people that surround you. That's why that's why when it spreads, it's at different durations, it's different symptoms, it's different intensities. And it's sparse. It goes from location to location based on people doing similar things. It's not that everyone on a plane gets sick. You know, when people freak out about getting sick on a plane, when do you see that everyone's gonna get sick and they need quarantine? You're gonna see that maybe a bunch of people that ate the food on the plane got sick, and the people who didn't and that were healthy didn't get sick. And people with genetic weaknesses who get sick very easily, they get inflamed very easily, those people get sick more easily. So but there's a lot of different people. There's like a big 100-year gap between the nutritional science and sciences of health. People that made very profound impacts on people who figured this information out. But in the last 100 years, there was like a boom of information just 100 to 200 years ago. And in the last 50 to 100 years, there hasn't been much information. It's more been about nutrition and lifestyle than life sciences, health system, information sharing. But yeah, so I don't share too much about this now because it was basically about this video. But people, will you calm down and will you consider other options? You don't have to absorb so much violent and punishable and so much desperate dramatic conclusions. You've got an internet with a plethoritude of resources. If you dig deep, you'll find stuff that really matters.